Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Exam Tricks and Tips. I'm starting a new series today. This is for the most popular exam of AWS, which is AWS Cloud Practitioner. This exam has been revised to a newer version to CLF-C02 since September 2023. So if you're appearing for this exam now, you'll be appearing for a revised exam. We'll be going through real exam questions as per the revised exam. Please subscribe to this channel. It encourages me to create relevant quality course material in the subject area. Because this is first episode today, I'll briefly cover the overview of AWS certification path as well. Let's get started. If you're trying to do AWS certification, there are 4 areas or 4 levels of certification exams. The first one is foundational. Cloud Practitioner is the foundational exam, hence the code CLF, Cloud Foundational. Then we have associate, that's the kind of next level. And from there onwards, we go to professional and specialty. In terms of if you are new to AWS certification domain, I highly recommend you should do the foundational exam first, which is the Cloud Practitioner. You don't really need much experience for doing this. Even if you're a student, you can go through the courseware, learn the AWS services, go through the documentation, and you'll be able to clear that exam. You don't really need prior experience for that examination. Associate, though, I highly recommend, obviously, that you know about the AWS services. Some sort of prior experience is necessary. It's not mandatory for appearing the exam. In fact, for all of these examinations, there is no mandatory condition that you have to prove what experience you have. But from a guidance perspective, I think you should have done foundational, which will introduce you to the concepts before you jump into the associate level. The questions become much bigger in terms of the length and the details. The number of services covered in associate go from kind of 1 service to like 3 services and permutation combination of that. So it really becomes difficult, and you really need to know subject content. And at the time of recording, we have the examination that you see on the screen under associate level. Then you have the professional and specialty group of exam. And again, I highly recommend that you have done an associate level examination before moving into the professional level examination of the similar track. For example, if you're doing solution architect professional, I would highly recommend you that you do, solution architect associate. Professional and specialty are kind of similar level in terms of complexity. It gets tougher. You really need to know your stuff. And I highly recommend that you have worked on AWS services if you're appearing for these examinations. In summary, start with foundation, then take up associate, and then you're free to go for foundation, professional and specialty examination. In terms of, I put a grid together just to compare this exam from numbers perspective. Questions for all of the examination, you have 65 questions, and because as you go from left to right, these exams kind of become difficult, tougher. Hence, the amount of time required is increasing. As you can see, foundational starts with 90 exam, whereas specialty professional ends up at about almost 3 hours, 180 minutes. Cost as well, it is increasing as you move from foundational to associate to professional. It's about $100 for foundational as of now, and associate is about $150. Professional specialty will cost you about $300. Passing examination, passing for these examinations, foundational is about 70%, 72% for associate, and 75% for specialty nations. Each of these exams will have 15 unscored questions, and you won't know which one those are. For you are giving 65 questions across these examinations, but you'll be actually scored on 50. These 15 questions are kind of trial questions that AWS will see in your examinations to see how people perform, and then based on how people are performing on those questions, they can be part of kind of real questions for future examinations. In terms of years of experience, take it with a pinch of salt. For foundational, you don't really need much experience. You can start from scratch. Associate, I would recommend that AWS services, some sort of experience with cloud services or AWS services specifically would be beneficial. Professional specialty exam, I really recommend that you have worked with AWS services and products. It's not mandatory. People can, study, in details, and as part of their, self-study itself, they can, clear all of these exams. But it really gets kind of difficult to score in professional and specialty if you haven't worked with this. So that's a certification path overview of examinations. Just have this sort of similar information for cloud practitioner examination. And I have various other videos where I have explained how to book for an examination, schedule an examination, and how to get discount on this examination. And I'll put those links in the video description. Moving on, how would you prepare for this examination? So this is my kind of uh, advice for you. And this is what I did as well when I started my cloud journey. Udemy course, absolutely amazing course from Stephen Marek. All his courses and wherever he needed to partner with somebody, he is partnered with the right subject matter expert. So go through this course. It's most of the time it comes, if you're in UK, it's about $15.99. You can get the discount every now and then. And the second most important thing then is the AWS documentation. Absolutely must. There's amazing, subject matter in this AWS documentation. So you would need to refer it again and again for AWS services, for detailed scenarios. And you would see in my video later on how I have used AWS documentation to solve the problems, eliminate the wrong options, etc. So AWS documentation and my exam series. I will cover hundreds of questions on this topic during the series, and I'll release videos every week for help you prepare better for this examination. So Udemy course, AWS documentation, exam tricks and tips is more than sufficient for you to pass this examination and in fact score high as well. So that's about how would you prepare for the examination. Yep, here's a kind of detailed view of the new course from Stephen Marek. In terms of problem solving trick, so here is my simple algorithm around how would I approach the problem. So most of these questions are multiple choice questions. You have to select 1, 2, or 3 answers from the given available options. So essentially, when you see the exam question, you need to kind of mark the keyword, identify the requirement. Once you do that, then you need to, when it becomes difficult for you to know the first answer itself, then you would like to eliminate the incorrect option. So that kind of helps you to narrow down, maybe eliminate 2, maybe eliminate 3, and get to the main answer. And then whatever you have after elimination you have left with, choose the best option from the remaining option, and then revalidate to see, okay, I've got rid of A, B, and C, and these left. D appears to be the right answer. Is it the right answer? Revalidate that answer. Now, in terms of this algorithm, you can apply to all of these AWS examination. In fact, other cloud certification examinations as well. In terms of cloud practitioner itself, it's a fair, comparatively an easier examination. So when you read the question, it will be around mostly one service. It's not going to be combination of services. So you would know, that this is the answer. So you might just go from step 1 to step 4. Yeah, you don't have to eliminate any incorrect options, etc. For some questions, you may have to do it, but for cloud practitioner, this you may not always have to do 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of using this, or you might be quickly running through this. However, when you get to the associate level or professional level examinations, it gets really tough. It really, there are multiple services, like 3 or 4 services that you need for as a solution for each of the problem scenario. The question itself is a problem scenario that you are trying to solve. And then every answer will be a long paragraph with multiple services. And then you have to follow this process strictly on those occasions. So yeah, more on that later when I'll start an associate level series. I'll kind of go over this again with the right level of details. So yeah, that was the overview of examinations, exam solving techniques, etc., etc. Let's now jump into the actual questions. Question number one. So throughout this series, I'll show you the question. You can pause the video, read the questions, look at the answers, but the technique will be, identify the requirements, eliminate the wrong answers where it's confusing, and I'll also give the tips of regarding, what I'm using specifically. Now, in case of Cloud Practitioner, there are not much thumb rules on tips, but, as you get deeper into the series, you'll find those tips coming more regularly, and I'll kind of highlight those. So the first question, yeah, read it. This talks about which cloud architecture design concept is supported by distributed workload across availability zone. So I'll pause here for a minute, go through the options, and then I'll come back to it. Hope you have read the question. Now, this is a fairly simple question, kind of a starter question. If you're looking at availability zone, the reason for availability zone is, you want your service to run when there is a failure. If something goes wrong in one availability zone, you have other availability zones. So this is a very straightforward, answer. I've highlighted my keywords here. It's a distributing workload across availability zone, and you can easily make out, the answer is the design concept that it supports is designed for failure. That if a failure happens, you're basically going to have multiple availability zones so that your service keeps running. So this is an easy one to start with. It's not about automation. It's not about agility. Having availability zone is not about elasticity as well. It is mainly about, you're designing, you're anticipating the failure, and that's why you're keeping your service in multiple availability zone. So question number one, answer is answer C. Hope you have made a note of it. Let's go to the next question. Question D, which compute hosting model should be accounted for in the total cost of ownership when undertaking a cost analysis that allows physical isolation of a customer workload? Please pause the video, go through the question, mark your keywords, go and look at the answers and try to guess the correct answer. Hope you have read the question. So I mark my keywords here. So the keyword is total cost of ownership and physical isolation. Now, again, on this one, it's kind of simpler. It's logical, or you may have to refer the AWS documentation. But in order to get physical isolation out of all of these options, only dedicated hosts can give you physical isolation. Reserve instances, on-demand instances, and upfront reserved instances, all of that will give you some sort of cost advantage, etc. But if you want a physical isolation of your workload, you can only get that when you have dedicated host. And exam tip for this essentially is refer to the AWS documentation. And yep, I have captured AWS documentation here for you, and I'll put the links for all of this in the video description where you can find it. But if you refer to the documentation for dedicated instances, you can see that physical isolation you get at hardware level, even if it's when instances belong to different accounts. So yeah, a fairly simple question. If you need physical isolation of your workload, you want to be using dedicated instances. It's costly, but it's a trade-off. Let's move on to the next question. Question 3, who's accountable for security and compliance under AWS shared responsibility model? Now, there's a big topic and a lot of documentation around this on shared responsibility model, and it's fairly logical and simple. Let's look at the keyword. keyword is essentially shared responsibility model. And the shared responsibility means that, customer and AWS both are responsible. So if where the options say, customer is responsible or AWS is responsible, which is option A, B, and then D, governing body, that doesn't work. You have a shared responsibility of security and compliance between AWS and customers. We can go over and you can, look at, exactly what the split of responsibilities, under that shared responsibility model. But the answer, from an answer perspective, the answer is C, and it's fairly easy. You can refer to the AWS documentation for shared responsibility model. Security and compliance is a shared responsibility between AWS and customers. So that's like kind of first statement of that model. And obviously we have details of, where is AWS responsible, where is customer responsible, etc., etc. That's question 3. Let's move on to the next question. Which pillar of the AWS well-architected architect framework is supported by design philosophy of performing operation as a code? So pause your video and read the question and identify the requirement. Hope you have done that. So there are a couple of keywords here: the pillar of framework as well as operation as a code, and it's kind of quite logical. Operation as a code is part of operation excellence. It's not about efficiency. It's not about reliability. It's not about security. The bullseye answer is operational excellence. And again, I'll refer to AWS documentation for this. The answer is answer B, operation excellence. And if you go to AWS documentation, you would find that operation as code is a design principle under operation excellence as the pillars of the frame. So that's it. Answer is answer B for question number 4. Let's move on to the next one. Question number 5. The question is, which AWS service can identify the person who made the API request when an Amazon EC2 instance is terminated? Now, there are 4 services here. Let's mark the keywords. So essentially, it's about an API request. Now, let's go one by one. If you go try to understand what Amazon CloudWatch does, so it basically monitors your AWS resources. It's not really for knowing, who made an API request. I'll jump for question B, but if you go to C, what does X-ray do? X-ray collects the data about your request, and then it kind of gives an option to you to view it, filter it, if you want to know more insights about it. It's not going to help you with API, who made an API request call. IAM, amazing service. It allows you to securely manage the identities and access the physical identity and access. It doesn't really cannot help you with to know who has done a particular API request call. So answer A, C, and D are not the right answer. We are left with option B, CloudTrail. Now, if you see what's the purpose of CloudTrail? CloudTrail is essentially used to track the user activity and API usage on AWS. And I'll show you the detailed documentation of AWS CloudTrail, and that's the answer. If you want to know, who made a certain API request, CloudTrail is the service built for that. Let's quickly check. So the answer to the question is answer B for question number 5. If you look at AWS documentation, you would see that CloudTrail allows you to identify and track different types of API calls. And if it is in the context of EC2 instance, you have these 4 types, and one of them is terminate instance, and that's what our question was about. So that's question 5 for you. Let's move on to next question. Question number 6. Yep. What is raised when a business deploys web server across AWS regions? So, what happens when you deploy web servers across several AWS regions? Is it coupling? Is it availability? Is it security? Is it durability? And it's quite obvious. We have covered kind of a similar question earlier in the video. But yeah, I'll give you a few seconds. You can pause the video, highlight the keywords. So keyword here is about web servers across several AWS regions. And that is all about availability. That's your answer. It's not about coupling. It's not about security. We're not deploying servers across various regions because we want it to be secure. No. And it's not about durability. It's about availability. When you do this, you have multiple instances in multiple availability zones in regions. So we are not just talking about availability zone, we are talking about regions. And if there is a disaster, if something goes wrong on one particular region, you still have your other region and your AWS service keeps running, your website keeps running, your business keeps running. So for your business continuity, it's important that you have this redundancy across availability zones, availability regions. So yeah, the A, C, and D are not the correct answer. The correct answer is availability, option B. Let's move on to the next one. Question number 7. Pause you. I'm not going to read the video. Sorry, read the question. Pause your video and read the question. So what's the keyword here? What's the unique advantage of enterprise support customer service? So there are different level of support you can get, and it's quite fairly logical. There is not much uh, knowledge here. You can, if you have gone through the AWS documentation, you will know that it's not about project manager. You don't get project manager just because you have AWS enterprise support, enterprise level support. Neither you get a cloud engineer nor you get a solution architect. But what you get is a TAM. You get a technical account manager who you can liaise to, like your one point contact for all your queries. So you get an access to technical account manager. So yeah, you just need to know this. There's no kind of elimination or knowledge area that we need to go over. So some questions will be like this where you have to just know it. So let's move on to the next question. Question 8 for your benefit here. So what we're looking at is we need to see in dedicated host environment, what would give you highest reduction in the cost. Now again, this one you need to know, but it's sort of logical. It's like, who would give you the biggest discount when you pay upfront? That would be if you're paying somebody a pay as you go, I guess, because you are getting more time to pay a certain amount. Obviously, the payment would be slightly higher. Whereas we know when you make some upfront payment, most of the businesses do that, not just cloud. Then you get kind of a bulk discount, and that's what the logic here. Uh, so the answer is all upfront payment. It's not A, B, or C, any sort of partial or hourly payment, etc. It is all upfront payment. And again, this is one similar to the previous one where you just need to know it, or you can logically also answer this. I have a slide for the AWS documentation for dedicated instances, and you would see uh, that this particular option on reserve instances does provide you maximum discount as compared to say on demand instance price. Question number 9. This is kind of a sample that you would see in associate level examination or complex questions where it's quite descriptive, and then you need to find the problem description. So what's the problem description here? What we're trying to solve? So we have a fluctuating workload. So there's some service running, there's Amazon DynamoDB, there are ECS services, mission critical web application, and uh, there are peak loads at some point in time, and that is 10 times the regular level. Now, what feature of cloud would help you adapt to these demands and changes? So is it agility, global reach, scalability, security? Definitely it's not about global reach, nor about security. And in fact, it's not even about agility. It's not about how quickly you're doing. It's about, can you do it? Can you, instead of, suppose the 10 times the load needs 20 ECS services and a certain level of Amazon DynamoDB capacity. If you have that all the time, you're obviously paying more, and you just need it for say an hour in the day. Whereas AWS allows you to scale it as per the need. And that's the feature, that's the answer here, scalability. It's not option A, B, or D. It's C, scalability. That's the correct answer. Option C for question 9. Okay, let's move to the next question. Question number 10. Now, in terms of, you have to refer AWS documentation. Amazon DynamoDB is not a SQL database, so that's ruled out. Database, again, that's not a relational database, so that's ruled out. So we are left with A and C. Now, Redshift and Amazon Aurora both are relational. However, Redshift is a data warehousing database. It's not for your regular SQL. So MySQL and PostgreSQL it doesn't support. So you're left with Amazon Aurora, and that's the answer. It's relational. It supports MySQL and PostgreSQL. And if you look at the documentation for AWS databases, you would see here, under relational, you have Amazon Aurora, you have RDS and Redshift as well. But Aurora does support, MySQL as well as PostgreSQL. So it's compatible. That brings us to the end of this episode. I will see you in the next episode, episode 2 of the series soon. If you like the content and want to get notified when I release the next episode on the series, then please do subscribe to this channel. Your subscription will encourage me to create quality content on this topic. Thanks for watching and see you in the next episode of this series. Thanks.